Here we go. Janelle, you there? You ready?
Yes, yeah, we're ready.
All right. All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's a pleasure to have you all join us today to talk about our Small Business Technical Assistance Expansion Program. This is Jesse Torres, Deputy Director of Small Business Innovation for GO-BIZ, also the State Small Business Advocate. And just before I begin and really kind of turn the reins to Janelle, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's been part of this long process to secure funding for all of our federal technical assistance partners. There are many folks that have been involved in this work for many years, long before I even got engaged. And I just want to say thank you to them for making this all possible. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Janelle Green from our small business team. I also give her a big thank you for all the work she's done in just putting together all these different materials. And she's been playing a big part in just the development of everything for the program. So let me turn over to Janelle.
Thank you, Jesse. And good morning. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Before starting, I have a few notes about the webinar platform. So participant lines will remain muted during the entire presentation. If you have a question during the webinar, please submit it during the presentation via the questions box on the vertical toolbar. We'll respond to questions during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Also, the slides and an audio recording of this webinar will be posted to the GO-BIZ website. We'll notify all registrants by email once they're posted, and we'll also provide the direct link. So now to get started, I'll provide an overview of what we're going to be covering today. So first, we're going to describe the program's purpose, funding, and timing. We'll call out the specific funding restrictions that are in the statute. We'll talk about the allowable activities and eligibility requirements. We'll go over the authorized representatives, and that's a key role in the program. We'll discuss the application submittal and the evaluation, and go over briefly some post-award details, and then just highlight again the 18-19 program period timeline and close with questions. And I just want to know that all the information, all this content that's in the webinar is also contained in the program announcement that all of you, I'm assuming, have received. So about the program's purpose. So SBTAPE supports the expansion of free or low-cost consulting and low-cost training services to small businesses and pre-venture entrepreneurs throughout the state. It covers a broad range of consulting and training services, ranging from commercialization, manufacturing assistance, business continuity and disaster recovery, among many other areas. And the program specifically prioritizes new and enhanced services to underserved business groups. And that would include women, minority, and veteran-owned businesses, and businesses in low wealth, rural, and disaster impacted communities that are included in a state or federal emergency declaration or proclamation. So SBTAPE offers $17 million in annual grant funding over a 5-year period ending on June 30th, 2023. The 18-19 grant period will commence on October 1st of this year, and it will end on September 30th, 2019. So thus, the program consists of single-year grants for each fiscal year. On a case-by-case basis and with written approval from GO-BIZ, centers may receive up to a 2-year extension to spend down any 18-19 grant awards. But please note the intention is for 18-19 awards to be fully spent within the 18-19 grant period. Centers should ensure that grant funding requests and proposed scopes of work align with the 18-19 grant period time horizon. And those grant payments will be issued to grant recipients on a quarterly on a cost reimbursement basis. So there are some important funding restrictions to call out. So first, state funds that are provided under the program shall not supplant local cash match dollars. And the required funding may not exceed the total federal award in a center's contract with a federal funding partner. But in any case, an award may not be less than $25,000 per year. And also, administrative and indirect costs are not allowed. And this is in keeping with the intention of the program, which is to focus on the expansion of direct services to businesses. So the categories of allowable activities are the following: direct technical assistance to small businesses, so essentially the one-on-one consulting, direct training to small businesses, and that would be workshops and classes for business owners. And it can include the cost of trainers, but also supplies, curriculum development, related training preparation, and webinar subscriptions for virtual training. Training may not, though, include travel. And then the third category is research. So that would be time and effort to assess a small business services needs in a center's geographical service area if planning an expansion, or research to inform a pilot project or other planned service expansion. It may not include the cost of research, tools, or reports that are just for specific, individual client consulting. And then the fourth category is marketing. And for purposes of the program, we're just defining that as it's printed and online campaigns by centers to reach small businesses in their communities. And so that includes the time and effort of personnel or consultants to conduct center marketing initiatives, and costs associated with print and digital media and subscriptions to database or marketing services that would support any expansions in a center's activities. And so some additional notes on allowable activities. An unlimited portion of the grant award may be used on for business consulting and training, so categories 1 and 2 as we just discussed. And research and marketing are limited to 20% of the total annual grant award. Any spending on marketing and research must be justified in the grant application, and there's a section in the application form that requires such language. And then funding may be used on personnel or consultant costs to carry out any of the allowable activities. For personnel, hourly rates may include salary benefits. So to be eligible for funding, applicants must demonstrate the following, and these requirements are within the statute for the program. They must have an active contract with a federal funding partner, and the federal funding partner is also a defined statutory term, to administer a federal small business technical assistance program in California, or a letter of intent from such a partner to administer a federal small business technical assistance program in the state by April 1st of 2019. If a center does not have an active contract or a letter of intent due to the timing of a federal partner's award decision, we will require in writing written correspondence from that partner that has to specify the nature of the timing issue. And in such a case, we may issue an award that's contingent on the future of federal contract or letter of intent. And then in addition, to be eligible, you must have a fiscal agent that is able to receive the non-federal funds and have a plan of action and commitment to fully draw down all of the federal funds available during the performance period using local cash match. And if a center is new, then the applicant must demonstrate the ability to fully draw down substantially all those federal funds that are available to it. Some words about the authorized representatives in the program. This is a key role in the administration. Authorized representatives will carry out a variety of responsibilities for applicants and ultimately grant recipients during the application process and the 18-19 grant period. For centers that operate as a group, that authorized representative will be the coordinating administrative entity defined by their federal program. So as an example, for an Sbdc subcenter, it will be the lead center. That will be the authorized representative. For centers that operate individually, the authorized representative will be the center itself or a designated entity that will represent a group of individual centers to carry out program responsibilities on their behalf. And just to note, those applicants that act as an authorized representative in a group application and agreement will receive an additional 10 points, bonus points in the scoring of their application. This slide summarizes the responsibilities under that role. So during the application and agreement process, they will submit the application to GO-BIZ. They'll receive the notice of award when the funding decisions have been made, and they will enter into the 18-19 program period agreement with GO-BIZ. And so for group applications and agreements, the authorized representative will need to enter into separate sub-agreements with the centers in their group agreement. Once the program period begins, the authorized representative will submit performance and financial reports from the centers in their agreement to GO-BIZ after reviewing them for accuracy and completeness. They'll receive and distribute GO-BIZ's quarterly reimbursements to the centers in their agreement, and then they'll serve as the principal contact for GO-BIZ and centers in a group agreement. And this communications role is really key. You know, when programmatic issues and questions arise, centers will be expected to contact their authorized representative, who will then engage GO-BIZ if it's necessary. Also, GO-BIZ will communicate to authorized representatives if there's program-related information that needs to be shared with centers. So now on with the application submittal process. So applications will be submitted electronically to GO-BIZ and essentially consist of the PDF application. It'll be a single file, and the intake sheet in an Excel and a CSV file format. And I'll talk more about that in the next few slides. Group-based programs will apply as a group, and the group's authorized representative will submit a single consolidated application to GO-BIZ that contains all the applications from the centers in their group. And again, that will be in one PDF file. And then centers that operate individually will either submit a group application under a single authorized representative or submit an individual application directly to GO-BIZ. So some words about the intake sheet. The intake sheet was attached to the GO-BIZ email that contained the program announcement. It's an Excel document, and it will summarize the grant request and the proposed milestones for all centers in a submitted application. And it'll be submitted to GO-BIZ by the authorized representative, as mentioned, as Excel and CSV file attachments along with the application. And so I just want to go over the steps to complete and submit that intake sheet in both file formats. So first, you'll take that Excel file from the email that went out, and you'll rename it, and the naming convention is provided. So you'll have your authorized representative name, have intake form, and then the date. So in this example, it's the Central CA Lead Center intake form with today's date. And then I'm actually going to open up the file to show how to save it as a CSV. So here's a mock intake sheet, and you'll see row 2 has the sample data, and I just created additional rows of data as an example, and there's some summary lines here. So to save it as a CSV, you'll go to Save As, and then under Save As Type, go to CSV, delimited, and then to minimize my view. Unfortunately, so the toolbar, the GoToWebinar toolbar is in my way. Okay, so you'll go to Save, and then you'll go to OK, and then a Yes. And then if you go into where your files are located, you'll see here, so I have the Excel, and now I have a CSV version. Both of these files will be attached to the email along with that PDF containing the application. I'll get back into the, and now it started. Let me get back to where we left off. Okay. Some words about the application submission and evaluation. After that submission deadline, members of a panel will evaluate and score application packages individually and in a panel format. The total possible score will be 100 points, and application packages that score below 30 will not be funded. And the criteria is as follows. So the proposed scope of work, which will be the narrative describing how services will be expanded within a service area. And then as a sub-question or sub-component to that will be the proposed activities to provide new or enhanced services to underserved business groups. So the first kind of sub-question under the broad scope of work is 40 points. It's 15 points under the activities for these specific underserved business groups. The second criteria is the management strategy, 20 points. Then collaboration and leveraging of resources at 15, and then financial management capability at 10 points. And instead of going into detail about each of these criteria, I'll refer back to the program announcement, which elaborates on each of them and describing what we are seeking in each of these categories. And as mentioned earlier, applicants that act as an authorized representative in a group application and agreement will receive up to 10 additional points in the scoring of their application, so on top of the 100 points. For post-award details, once the award amounts for all recipients have been determined, GO-BIZ will email the authorized representative a notice of award, which will indicate the award amounts for each of the centers in the application and instructions about next steps. If a center's award amount is different from the amount requested, the center will be required to revise its scope of work and milestones based on the final award. And then once the milestones are finalized, the program's funding will be awarded in an agreement between GO-BIZ and the authorized representative. The agreement will contain standard terms and conditions and specify the award amount, reporting and invoicing requirements, the scope of work and milestones that will be used to evaluate the recipient's progress, all of that during the defined program period. And in the case of group submissions, the authorized representative, as mentioned, will need to enter into separate sub-agreements with each of the centers in their group. Reports will be required quarterly during the 18-19 program period. An online system is currently being developed by GO-BIZ IT, and instructions on how to submit reports using that system will be provided no later than 1 month before the first quarter reports are due, and that due date is February 15th. 2019. So to go over the timeline, applications are due by noon on August 24th, and they must be submitted by email to the email address provided here, sbtape@gobiz.ca.gov, and grant awards will be announced on the 4th. Please note this is a correction. The program announcement has September 3rd, which actually falls on Labor Day, so September 4th is when that news will be provided. And then September 5th to September 28th, during that period, the agreements will be prepared and executed between GO-BIZ and the authorized representatives. And then the program will begin on October 1st, and it will conclude on September 30th, 2019. And at this time, we'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Janelle, did you want me to run through the questions we have already received?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that. I know we received them. And if just a heads up, if anybody's trying to email us right now, just know that we're having an email issue, and I think it might be across a number of different agencies, but just a heads up on that. But let me just share some of the questions we received already via email, and I'll just go through it. So one question was, what backup do we need for the 20% marketing and research? How will this be reported? Centers will be required to retain copies of receipts, invoices, contracts, and other supporting documentation for all expenses paid with program funds. And the invoice template bill will include separate fields for centers to report expense, labor, and non-labor costs for marketing and research. The non-labor costs will require a brief description of the costs incurred. Second question we received, as we understand it, the TAPE funds can pay for trainings. Can they pay for curriculum development and prep for trainings, as well as the actual hours in front of attendees? Or is it essentially straight presentation time? How will these hours be reported to GO-BIZ? So training may include the cost of trainer supplies, curriculum development, and related training preparation, and webinar subscriptions for virtual training. Training may not include travel. The invoice template will include a separate field for centers to report, as mentioned, the expense, labor, and non-labor costs for training. Non-labor costs, as mentioned before, will require a brief description of the cost incurred. Third question I have here If a center chooses to hire an employee for expressly doing counseling and training, do we need to record 2,080 hours in Neosera for their time or subset? Nationally, full-time business counselors put in approximately 1,400 counseling hours. In essence, can we bill for the whole FTE person or just for the counseling hours in Neosera? I know this is a particular question for a specific program, but under this scenario, the center would be able to bill just for the counseling hours expended in Neosera. The next question, what happens to any surplus funds if the full 17 million doesn't get allocated in the first year? So we think the question is turning to, is there essentially a chance that we may be undersubscribed as far as applications? We think such an event would be unlikely, but we do have other options that we can consider should such an instance occurs. So at this point, we'll reserve judgment and options until we see exactly how many applications we get in and for how much. Next question we received, for the proposed number of clients consulted and proposed number of clients trained, do you want the total for the center or some subset that is just paid for by GO-BIZ? It is going to be difficult to differentiate. The recommendation is to have us report the larger number. So GO-BIZ will need the number of clients consulted and trained under the SBA grant funding. It is a little bit challenging to address this specific question. We might need to have a little bit more clarification about what some of those difficulties would be. So if you're, whoever submitted the question, if you'd like to do a follow-up to us, we'd be happy to respond to that. But it'd be good to know exactly what the differentiation problems would be. Next question, the reporting list states that it should be 5 success stories per reporting period. Does that mean 5 per service center or 5 for an aggregate group of centers? So we will require 5 success stories per authorized representative total. So we will provide instructions for the success stories and all the other reporting requirements no later than 1 month before the first quarterly reports are due on February 15, 2019. Just a comment, although the maximum requires 5 success stories, doesn't mean that you can't go ahead and collect additional success stories. And just something that I do recommend, don't limit yourself to whatever we're asking for. Feel free to continue and gather other success stories, because I know that there'll be of strong interest to all the different stakeholders you have in your community. But for the sake of our program, just 5 success stories per authorized representative. Next question was, will GO-BIZ be giving a list of industry sectors or use the list auto-generated by Neosera? GO-BIZ will use the list that is auto-generated by Neosera. Next question, in section 1 of the application, it asks for the local cash match amount. Should this amount include the SIP funding or not? So as you all know, there's 2 other funding pools that are being made available. There's a $3 million just for the Sbdc program and a $3 million allocation for essentially all the primary technical assistance programs, excluding Sbdc and MET. So yes, those funding pools can be included as part of your local cash match amount. And just a note on the $3 million allocation for the non-Sbdc programs, we are looking to get that out within the next couple days. We're just finalizing a lot of the details around that, and I will definitely let you know as soon as it gets ready for distribution. Next question, in section 1 of the application, it asks for the local cash match amount. Should this amount include in-kind match or not? No, it may only include cash match, so in-kind should not be included. Next question, in section 1 of the application, it asks for the local cash match amount. Should this amount include waived indirect or not? The answer is no, it should only include the cash match. Next question, in section 2 of the application mentions letters of recommendation for new centers. Do you want letters of recommendation for existing centers and also for new project satellites too? Letters of recommendation for new project satellites, new centers are encouraged. And then the last question I have here, in section 4 of the application, what does organization's current cash balance mean? And this would be the cash and cash equivalents of the balance sheet of the organization's most recently audited financial statements. And those are the questions we received in advance. Janelle, did we get anything else?
Yeah, we did. I've just opened up the questions box. So the first question here is, will each single year grant be competitive? The answer is yes. It'll follow the same process as this year's competitive application process. The second question is, since you cannot use the funds to supplant a center's local match, then in the case of an SBDC center, the funds could not be used to match SBA funding or vice versa. Yes, these funds are not. Oh, so the question, Jesse, is can these funds be used for on the SBA side for match?
Right. I think they're saying, yeah, for the sake of this program, it wouldn't be used to draw down federal match. It's be used to expand upon existing programs. And just to keep in mind that the other $2-3 million allocations can be used as match against the federal agency.
Okay, the next question, can an organization be eligible if they are not designated as a center, but have federal grant agreements to provide small business technical assistance? And Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to need to fulfill the definitions of a federal small business technical assistance center and a federal funding partner in the statute, and also those applicant eligibility requirements that I went over in slide 8, correct? All of those have to be satisfied.
Yes, exactly. And definitely if anybody has any specific questions around that, would like to email us to ensure eligibility, please do in advance of submitting an application, just so you're on, you're fully aware of the eligibility requirements.
Another question, if it's a new center, what does the eligibility mean when we're saying that an applicant must demonstrate the ability to draw down substantially all? That's about what we can kind of consider order of magnitude of like 85% or so of all the federal funds available to it.
Correct.
Yeah. Let's see. If our agreement is with Caltrans, it's federal funding from DOT to provide TA to support small businesses, would our agreement be considered a federal partnership and thus make us eligible for this funding opportunity? Again, I would point back to the statute. I'd recommend, again, looking at the statutory language of those definitions of federal small business technical assistance center and a federal funding partner, and those other eligibility components to ensure that you would be able to qualify for this grant program.
Yeah, and just as before, if you'd like to reach out to us on that specific example, we're happy to discuss and take a look, better understand this is essentially a federal pass-through. If it essentially become, a state program, it would be helpful to learn a little bit more about what the actual nuance of that program is.
Another question, so please advise if you require a copy of the federal award with the submission of the application. We do not require a copy. However, the information we would be seeking would be within that page 1 of the application, where you have to sign off that you have an agreement or a letter of intent and provide information about the award and the cash match requirement. Let's see, where can we find a copy of the presentation and questions and answers discussed? Once we have the file, the recording downloaded, we're going to put it on our website, and we'll notify all of you and provide the direct link, and we'll also provide the questions and answers as well, typed out. That'll come early next week. Let's see. Why Sbdc is located in an underserved rural area. Is this assistance program open to Sbdc? We do receive TA funding from EDA. Yes, indeed, this is open to the Sbdcs. What is the source for confirming eligible low wealth areas? Jesse, do you want to take that one?
That's a great question. We can help provide direction about where to find that information, that data. It'll be specific to your county or city, but we're happy to provide that to you if you don't have it already. Would
a business assistance center that receives funding through a USDA small business assistance grant qualify, or does funding need to be through an Sbdc? Funding does not need to be through an Sbdc, but that funding through the USDA would just need to meet those definitions in the statute for a federal funding partner and a federal small business technical assistance center and the other eligibility requirements. So we would just point you back to those statutory requirements. See, there's a question about past performance on page 17 of the program announcement. It states, please clarify the past performance for the last 3 fiscal years and what is the defined reporting period. I'm just going to turn to that page.
Sorry, Janelle, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so it's about page 17 of the program announcement on past performance. It states, please clarify the past performance requirements. It's for the fiscal years 15-16 through 17-18. What is the defined reporting period? So it's for the fiscal year period, the state's fiscal year period. So that's July 1st through June 30th. And that's noted there in a footnote to question number 8 on page 17. How can non-Sbdc programs participate? And there's some sub-questions here. No, that's actually a different one. So they can apply through an authorized representative, just based on the process that we've described in the webinar. So it's definitely open to other types of federal small business technical assistance programs beyond Sbdcs. All the steps that we just discussed would apply. Okay, question. Since local Sbdc service centers are subcontractors of lead Sbdcs and don't hold cooperative agreements, why would they have a roll-up portion of the proposal? Wouldn't it be directed from the lead center, who's the only holder of a cooperative agreement? That's the first question. Jesse, you want to take that?
Yes, I mean, the lead center could apply, if I understand correctly. Would the lead center be the most appropriate to apply? It would make more sense if they had the standing cooperative agreement with the federal agency. So yes, I think the intention, as far as I understand, is that the lead center will be applying on behalf of all the subcenters.
Would a lead Sbdc be eligible to receive the bonus 10 points for acting as a fiscal agent or authorized representative? Yes. Can we see a beta test for the reporting portal? So the online system is currently being developed, and while we're promising to have the instructions a month before the due date, we plan to have a beta test ready sooner than that. So we'll provide it as soon as possible. Sub-question 4, the statute and the performance reports indicate funding is for 5 years. This RFP is for 1 year. Quality expansion plans require multiple years to be most effective, in particular when targeting new underserved populations. What is the process for applying for multi-year grants? So you can mention in your narrative that your ask for the 18-19 program period is part of a multi-year plan for expansion, and we would welcome that. However, in the administration of the program, they are going to be single-year grants each fiscal year. Jesse, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean exactly that. We're not able to essentially say, you wouldn't be able to apply for example, $40 million stretched over 5 years. It's really limited to that single year amount of appropriated funding. So it's $17 million every year. We're not able to do that kind of contract.
Let's see, and there's some more questions coming in, and there was a comment stating that some of these were sent in yesterday morning, and unfortunately we didn't receive them. I think the email issues that we're having today probably started yesterday. So let me continue on. So if you encourage women's business centers and other programs to join under a single fiscal agent, why isn't there an option for the fiscal agent to receive administrative funding to provide the service required as a fiscal agent?
Yeah, again, the intent and purpose of the program is to support direct business assistance. So unfortunately, for the sake of the program, we're not able to do that.
And if there isn't any funding for the fiscal agent to administer the program, can each of the sub-agencies include a portion of their request to pay the fiscal agent to administer the overall agreement? Would it be in the individual center's budgets, and would that be an allowable or allocable expense? And the answer is no, that wouldn't fall under any of the four allowable categories for funding for the program. And the intent is really for this to go directly towards the expansions of services. Jesse, did you have anything to add to that?
Nope.
The fiscal agent per the RFP receives a bonus 10 points. What benefit is there for those 10 points? Well, when it comes to those awards decisions, those 10 points is a 10% bump for the application that's being proposed by that authorized representative. I really can't elaborate beyond that unless Jesse, you had any comments there.
No, just that there would be that additional point value.
Yeah, and then it was mentioned that the Women's Business Center submitted questions, and I didn't receive those either. So we apologize for the email glitch. If a Women's Business Center has less than 3 years of experience, but the host has many years of experience with other programs, what evidence should be presented?
I'm thinking that would be contained within the application itself as far as attesting to the past performance. So there's a little bit to kind of say at this point how you would best indicate that without really kind of diving into your specific application. But I might be missing something with that question. Feel free to email me if you have a specific additional questions around that.
Yeah, and you would also be able to, for new center, so this is kind of pointing to the question number, the financial management capability section, questions 7 through 10. And for new centers, we're welcoming letters of recommendation and key resumes. So you could feel free in this case to include the key center personnel that have all the experience that you're describing.
Yeah.
Can we see a beta test for the reporting portal? So we've covered that. Will answers to the question, okay, yeah, we've covered that. The questions will be provided. Can CDFIs receive federal funds and provide technical assistance apply? So again, I'll point back. I would recommend looking at the statutory language about how a federal small business technical assistance center and a federal funding partner is defined and the eligibility for applicants. And if all of those are met, they would indeed qualify. I think I'm reading now a duplicate question, so just one moment. Yeah. Okay. So here's another one. Can STEP funding be used as a requirement to comply with the federal funding?
And that's an really interesting question, and very specific to that program, since GO-BIZ actually is a co-administrator of that program. So we'll need to go back and make that determination. So we'll provide an answer to that as part of the Q&A posting.
Another question, is every year with the program announcement a competitive year, or is it a non-competitive renewal? As mentioned before, it is indeed competitive each year. Can option year proposals be submitted? If so, how will those be treated and considered in the notice of award? No, it's a single year approach. Can you clarify for multi-agency proposals what is required for the roll-up overall group proposal? Nothing special besides what was described, in the submission process. So that authorized representative will provide an intake sheet describing, listing all of the different centers that are coming from different agencies and their proposed milestones and their funding requests. The RFP suggests expanding and creating satellite offices. Would costs for the new space, rent, furniture, tenant improvements, and equipment be allowable or allocable? And no, that would not fall under the 4 categories of qualifying expenditures, unfortunately. So I point back to the slide that we presented. It's also, that language is in the RFP about, or program announcement, about allowable costs.
Are there other questions?
Trainings require administrative support such as coordinators and schedulers. Are those costs allowed?
I think that refers to the time and effort. So time and effort would be allowed.
Would large multi-breakout session style events be considered as training? They require significant administrative time and have costs for speakers and trainers.
As long as it's seen as a training event under your federal agency, and I believe that would constitute, just harking back to my own experience. So I believe it would. But a little bit difficult to see to understand exactly what kind of event it is. That they'll probably detail much more in your application. But at first blush, I believe it would.
How are hard costs related to administering the grant or program management able to be charged? And are they part of the 80% of service, part of research? We already went over that, so we're not allowing any grant administration costs. Are capacity building costs for centers, such as purchase of IT equipment to support new staff and the services allowable? Again, that wouldn't qualify under those 4 categories, so no. The RFP suggests expanding and creating satellite offices. Actually, that's a duplicate question here. Let's see. Do you need to add FTEs to increase output, or can existing staff be used to grow capacity? Existing staff could indeed be used if it's to support a satellite effort or a pilot project. We would just need to, we would need more information in the narrative of what exactly is being proposed.
And just to add that, that's really at the discretion of the applicant. What, as far as strategy, are you looking to increase the number of hours currently being done by existing staff, or are you looking to add on additional staff to do the work? It really kind of depends on what your strategy is.
So women's business centers only count businesses launched. The question is if we would count businesses grown. They're looking to add business expansion services, and would that count? We'll need to chat offline about how that's defined and how that might be different from what we're requesting for businesses consulted and trained. How do we distinguish between an existing business and a pre-venture individual, and how are they counted? We're not in milestones. We're not asking for them to be distinguished. We're asking for businesses consulted and trained. So there's no need to distinguish between an existing or pre-venture business. And so yes, pre-venture individuals can be included under businesses consulted and trained. And the question is, can these totals be duplicated, or do they need to be unduplicated? So can a business that is receiving consulting that also participates in a training be counted under both categories? And that answer would be yes. There's a long, I'm trying to sort through a long question here. There's a question about the definition for small businesses. So we do have a definition that we're going to be using for purposes of the program that's provided in the program announcement. So I'd refer to that, and that is on page 4. So for purposes of the program, it means a business with 500 employees or less for most manufacturing and mining industries, and 7.5 million or less in average annual receipts for non-manufacturing. If this is a reimbursement-only basis, are there any any considerations for small nonprofits who have timely cash needs? So the process is quarterly invoicing. There aren't any other payment arrangements besides those, and on a reimbursement basis. Jesse, did you have any comments on that? About the reimbursement nature?
No, other than we understand that a number of the programs are now looking to essentially coalesce around authorized representatives that can help address that particular kind of issue. Yeah, but apart from that, we are going to be doing it on a quarterly reimbursement basis.
There's a question about the three buckets, if you will, of funding that we have right now. So there's this $17 million program for SB-TAPE. There's the capital infusion program, and then the other $3 million tranche for other programs. And the question is about how are they related. For our purposes, they are individual programs with individual application procedures and individual reporting. I hope that answers your question. What form is the collaboration rating based on? In the collaboration section of the application, the question is, are we seeking funding partnerships, formal MOUs? You know, we're just seeking tangible examples of work between organizations. So we're not going to rate an MOU higher than a partnership. We're just looking for tangible examples to be provided. And then for the SBA microloan TA program, there is a match for SBA microloans. Are they eligible to apply? Again, please refer back to the definitions. This is a long one. Okay. Will the award for each Women's Business Center be determined by GO-BIZ, or will the fiscal administrator decide how much funding each center will receive? Would GO-BIZ be scoring each center separately? Yes, each center will be submitting an application and will be evaluated separately. Should letters of support come from other funders or clients or partners, or any of the above? And I would say any of the above, Jesse. Do you have any? Yeah. Can a center submit a proposal and also be included in another Sbdc application? I'm not sure what is meant by another Sbdc application. So,
if they're part of a rolled up application, you know, we'd like to see one single application.
Yeah, absolutely. If a center does not spend their grant award within a group proposal or individually, will they be penalized for future awards? There's no process for penalizing a grantee, but like we said, the intention is for it to be fully spent down within that year's time period, and so we ask applicants to be mindful of that, but there isn't necessarily a penalty, you know, if there are asks in future years, you know, depending on the extent of the amount that wasn't spent, we'd probably expect an explanation in the narrative. Jesse, if you have anything there to add.
I agree with that. And just as part of our, you know, oversight process, we'll be in regular communication with all the different partners. You know, so you know, we'll be working with everybody just to make sure that we're fully aware of whatever the financial situation is. But as far as a penalty, no, we wouldn't be penalizing per se.
Yeah, there's a question, how does GO-BIZ look at the cash match versus the all match? Does GO-BIZ mean by match only the required match by the federal government or all match? So, oh, Jesse, sorry.
Yeah, I would say the required match.
The required cash match?
Right, correct.
And how do the goals for consulting and training and federal contracts relate to the GO-BIZ proposal? If an organization commits to a federal goal, does the GO-BIZ money require that the organization have a separate set of goals or deliver more than their federal goal? Or are their GO-BIZ goals encompassed in a federal proposal? How, where would it be documented? So these would be over and above. You know, this is an expansion-oriented program. These would be goals beyond what would be in the federal award. There was a question about could existing systems used under federal processes could those be used for reporting? And you know, the answer is no. You know, we're going to have our own online system for doing that on a quarterly basis. let's see, can we submit our current year cooperative agreement knowing that they will be expiring at the start of this grant, but have option years or non-competitive renewal? Yeah, we don't need to have the actual cooperative agreement, but we'll just need you to be able to fill out that section on page 1 that affirms that you have an agreement or letter of intent for the program period.
Hey, Janelle, I just want to go back to that previous question around kind of the systems. You know, if you're already using a system to report out your metrics, to capture your metrics, essentially if you're using that to collect your data, you can use that information, that same set of information. So I'm just wondering if the person is asking, do I need to essentially buy some kind of entire new system to do the reporting? If you already have, say, Neosera that you're already using to capture data, you can just use that same data set.
Yeah, it'll just need to be inputted into our system, but the data will be the same, right, in terms of the metrics. Yeah. When will okay, let's see. I think a lot of these have been answered now. Does time and effort documentation need to indicate that the work performed is for new or expanded services? So there will need to be copies of receipts for all the expenses and client records maintained. And in the case of an audit, we would want to review those kinds of materials and make sure that the work is in alignment with the scope of work that's in the agreement. Not sure, Jesse, if you have anything to add there about time and effort documentation.
No, I think you captured it.
Okay, great. And I think that takes care of all of the questions. There are a number that were already answered. And like I said, we're going to provide written answers to these. And we appreciate you providing all these questions. And for those of you who did in advance, we apologize that we did not receive them. So apologies for the email glitch, but we'll get you these answers by early next week. Thank you again for your time, and again, we'll also be in touch with a copy of the recording to this webinar.
Absolutely, and just when in doubt, any burning questions, don't hesitate to just reach out to me. You see my email there. And especially if it's around eligibility, before you launch into an effort around an application, just go ahead and reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for your time. We appreciate it. And yeah, again, feel free to reach out if there are more questions. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Janelle.